Economics has a long history at Michigan. The act that created the university in 1817 specified economic sciences as one of the 12 core subjects. Initially, it was taught by philosophers. Think Adam Smith, right? Wealth of Nations. And often this philosopher was also president of the university. Therefore, many of the buildings on campus, many of the streets in Ann Arbor are named, in fact, after economists. Angel, Tappan, Haven, all taught economics at the University of Michigan, which has always puzzled me that Lorch Hall is named after an architect, Emil Lorch, who was dean of the School of Architecture. We also have the Shapiro Library, which is also an economist. So somehow everything except the economics department is named after economists at the University of Michigan. I'm going to be brief because we really want to get, you guys are the stars, but I do want to start by acknowledging the graduates, the class of 2023. You have persevered through so much, adapting COVID, adapting post-COVID, recession, inflation. I'm sure macro helped there. But I would like to give a round of applause to the class of 2023. Second, I would like to acknowledge all of the parents and friends who are in the audience. I don't think these people could have done it without you. You've supported them throughout the years. You're here now. I'd like to give a round of applause for all the parents and friends. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our Director of Graduate Studies, Sebastian Sotelo.
My name is Sebastian Sotelo, and I am the Director of Graduate Studies at the Department of Economics. It is a great honor to be here today to introduce to you our graduating doctoral students. A graduation ceremony prompts us to reflect on the past and to peer into the future. As we reflect on the past, the place to start is to note that your accomplishments today would not have been possible without family and friends. For example, one of my co-authors tells me that every time he discusses his research with his brother, he invariably gets one of two answers. Either your idea is implausible or your idea is obvious. A dose of brotherly skepticism is always healthy, but I am sure that for you, your family and friends have been a source of boundless support and a place to come back to in difficult times. Please join me in acknowledging again the vital role they have played in helping you get this far. Looking back on these past years you have spent in Lorch Hall, it is also time to ponder on your many accomplishments. You have survived an exceedingly demanding first couple of years, learning core materials, and quickly getting yourselves to the frontier of knowledge. What is more, you have charted your own way and pushed that frontier, spending countless hours gathering and analyzing data, planning and executing experiments, writing and simulating models. Our discipline is wonderful in many ways. Take as an example the constant scrutiny of our peers that improves our research and pushes us to learn. But for that same reason, it leaves little room for complacency. So if today, or in the days that follow, you feel the unfamiliar sensation of pride, you should embrace it and remind yourselves that it is justly deserved. Today you are receiving a doctoral degree. This means that you are now part of an old lineage of thinkers across many disciplines who have transformed our society. It also means that you have now become the teachers. So as we look into the future, we expect you to share your knowledge with others and to bring Michigan-style economics to all your future endeavors. I have not had the fortune to meet many of you in the classroom, so as we move on to recognize the accomplishments of each of our new PhDs, I look forward to hearing about your research from your advisors. And without further ado, let's move on to that stage. Our first graduating student is James Allen and his advisor, Dean Yang. Congratulations.
One of the most important pieces of advice that I give to my graduate students in development economics is that to come up with a cutting-edge research idea is hard. So if you can, you should try to tap into the unique aspects of your personal experience and background to come up with an innovative idea. And of all the students that I've had, I think James has really taken this most to heart. He built very, very fundamentally on his experience as a Peace Corps volunteer in Mali to come up with his dissertation, the core idea behind his job market paper. And James always tells the story when he presents the paper. Basically, when he was a Peace Corps volunteer in Mali, he observed that students often would miss school in order to work on their household farm because basically the school calendar was mistimed vis-a-vis the agricultural calendar when children needed to be in the fields to help their families with planting and harvest. We're all familiar with the idea that in the U.S., basically broadly the school year is set up so that the summer is off so that kids can work on the farm, at least the olden days. But that has been persistent. What James shows in his job market paper is a very, very important and I think relevant policy insight, probably one of the most relevant policy insights in any dissertation that I've advised in 20 years. That basically there are huge gains if you can optimize the school calendar in sub-Saharan Africa so that it doesn't overlap with the key agricultural seasons when children have to be on the farm to help with planting and harvesting. Very, very fundamental insight. I expect this is going to have a big impact on public policy decision-making in sub-Saharan Africa. Very rare thing for someone to have the prospect of just coming out with their dissertation. So, fantastic work on the dissertation, very policy relevant. I would be remiss if I also didn't note that James also brought a ray of light into the pandemic for all of us on Michigan Economic Skit Night, which was on Zoom when James was the MC and started us all off on an amazing rendition of the Mr. Rogers opening song, but with an economics twist. So I will never forget that. So in sum, thank you and congratulations, James.
Brian Ceballos Fuji, and I happen to be his advisor. So in his thesis, Brian answers a wide variety of questions in spatial economics. The main chapter asks why investors cluster together in space, and more so than other types of workers. Brian shows convincingly that knowledge spillovers bind inventors together. That is, the same inventor innovates more when he's surrounded by other inventors. His paper helps us understand the process, somewhat mysterious yet also crucial to society, through which new ideas are generated. In all his work, Brian adheres to the highest standards in research, pushing the frontier in modeling and statistical analysis. So Brian and I are both Peruvian. We attended the same college back home in Peru. We were research assistants for the same economist in DC, and we have worked together here at Michigan. We finally part ways as Brian goes back to DC to work at the Census Bureau. Congratulations, Brian. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to hearing about your new research.
We don't practice this.
Keshav Garut and Sarah Miller.
Congratulations, Keshav. So it's been such a pleasure and a privilege working with Keshav. He's a great scholar, very creative, very ambitious, and always willing to tackle a problem. And I think his job market paper really personifies this. So just to give you a little context, I'm a health economist, and one thing that's sort of befuddled our field a bit is that consumers seem to make very poor choices when it comes to picking health insurance plans. In fact, there was a recent study that showed even low-income Americans who had access to completely free, no premiums, no cost-sharing health insurance didn't sign up, and they did an RCT to prompt them to sign up and found that they had much lower mortality if they'd signed up. So this is just very perplexing for an economist. Why are they leaving so much surplus on the table? So Keshav came to me with a very intriguing hypothesis about this. Maybe part of why people are making such bad decisions is that they are avoiding information. If you think about the information you need to make a decision about health insurance, you have to think about some pretty grim stuff, right? Like, what's the probability I get a cancer diagnosis next year? What's the probability I'm going to be in some traumatic car accident, right? This might just be stuff that we don't want to sit with. For those of you PhD students in the audience who aren't graduating, think about when you go home and your mom asks, when's that dissertation going to be done? It's just, I don't want to think about it, Mom, So, the hypothesis, maybe this behavioral bias of information avoidance is driving some of these decisions. And I was intrigued by this hypothesis, but honestly, I was a little bit skeptical because where can you get data on information avoidance? This is just not something that's collected in federal surveys. But Keshav had a really creative solution to this, which is and very ambitious, I think, for a dissertation. He recruited participants into an online study where he actually got to observe them, gave them the opportunity to pay to avoid seeing health information. So it wasn't just, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you avoid health information? No, he actually saw the choices that these participants made, and he was able to identify people who were information avoiders, and then link them not only to the actual health insurance status they reported, but also hypothetical health insurance decisions that they would make under different distributions of risk. So this let us learn about this population that no one's been able to study before, and I think that alone is a great contribution. But Keshav goes even farther, and he uses this study population to do an RCT, where he randomly assigns information to some of the avoiders to allow him to examine this information channel in this sort of these weird health insurance choices, and allowing him to kind of rule that out as a potential mechanism. So I think this is just a terrific study. I think this is going to be really useful for people in health economics, certainly, but in behavioral economics in general, thinking about choice and choice quality. And it's, again, just been a really great pleasure to work with you, Keshav. Congratulations.
Joshua Greenberg and Hoyt Blakely.
Hello. So Josh and I have kind of two running conversations. The first time we met, I actually asked him how long does he expect to live, which seems like maybe that's a personal question. So I'll say human capital theory tells us that your decision about how much schooling should be responsive to your estimates of the returns. Part of the returns are going to be horizon. How long do you expect to be working after the fact? So the context is I was interviewing Josh for a joint MD PhD program. And I started to think, well, maybe that's an awful lot of time input. You better expect a very large horizon on the outside. Okay, so that's conversation one. Conversation two stems from his very interesting pre-doctoral work, thinking about health systems in sub-Saharan Africa and actually running a charity that thinks about improving healthcare delivery under different circumstances, often when the institutions are quite weak. And our conversation on that matter was essentially that, which is why do these things not work in ways that you would expect, given that there seems to be this tremendous demand for a lot of the services that are out there, but they're things that make the supply aspect not work so well. So that's his dissertation, effectively, is thinking about those questions. what are the aspects of individual behavior or perhaps collective behavior that keep these systems from working well. And right now he's taking up a postdoc to think about scaling up one particular intervention from his dissertation, which was organizing meetings between community members, politicians, bureaucrats, thinking about what information is not being communicated in the right direction. Hopefully he's going to be able to organize that into a full scaled-up pilot during his postdoc, and we expect him to be working for the next 100 years so he can evaluate all the outcomes as well. So congratulations, Josh, on I guess PhD and MD. It's a lot of time. That deserves a round of applause, right? Yeah.
Haik Hambartsumian and John Leahy.
It's my great pleasure to talk about Haik's research. I mean, Haik's one of the most hardworking, creative students I've ever had, and that makes him a huge pleasure to have worked with. He's a finance economist, and his interest is in the term structure of equity. Now, we all know what the term structure of interest rates is. There's short rates, there's long rates. Long rates tend to be higher than short rates, except for when a recession's about to happen, in which the term structure inverts and bad things happen. The term structure of equity is the same idea, but applied to dividends, not to bond returns. And we have lots of models of equity pricing, but they all get the explanation of the term structure wrong. What Haik shows is there's a significant predictable dividend growth component to movements in this term structure that just are absent from standard asset pricing models. So what he does is he constructs a general equilibrium model of with the term structure. Firms have profits are dividends, but crucially, there's a financial friction, so they have to self-finance investments. So what happens during a boom is you don't pay dividends initially. You take the money, you invest in capital, dividends fall, but they're expected to grow because as the capital and profits grow and the economy gets better, and so he gets that predictable dividend growth. And he shows that this can help explain the term structure. And my hope is that he doesn't publish his thesis, because he's going to work for Qtron Investments in Boston. And right now, he has an advantage over everyone else in the market, and he should spend a few years earning money off of these ideas before he shares them with the rest of the world. So congratulations, Haik.
Caitlin Haggerty and Matthew Shapiro.
So congratulations, Caitlin, on an outstanding dissertation. It's a quintessential Michigan piece of work. It asks a really relevant and current policy question and vexing one. Why is the black unemployment rate different both in level and cyclicality? So something that's very much on the mind of policymakers. But it also has a Bellman equation in it, and it combines that with keen data analysis to actually come with an answer. And first, the thesis uncovers very interesting facts that black unemployment is concentrated in large firms, and large firms have different cyclical dynamics of entry and exit of workers. And that establishes, then it would be a Michigan labor economics thesis. And then there is a macroeconomic analysis that builds a general equilibrium model that explains this through a mechanism. Why would big firms be different? And she builds a theory of social networks where big firms have more professionalized human resources departments, small firms hire through networks, and that's going to lead to having blacks who are less likely to be in the network of small firms to be unemployed differentially at large firms and therefore inherit the cyclical dynamics of large firms. So this is a superb thesis. It's going to be influential for both policymakers and analysis and the analytic community. So congratulations on that. Congratulations also for going off to William College to join the strong tradition of Michigan alums who populate that wonderful school. So congratulations.
Thomas Helgerman and Betsy Stevenson.
I'm so happy to be here today to get to talk to you about your work. I was brought on, as you know, a little bit late to your committee when Martha Bailey left. You needed a scholar who focused on gender and labor, and that was me. And it's been a real joy to be able to see you develop your dissertation. So Thomas asks what I think of are really important questions, which is when we pass policy, particularly related to discrimination, does it work? Does it really do anything? And I think it's almost as simple as that. When we look overall at your research portfolio, your job market paper asked a much more specific question. Did policy drive the growth in women's enrollment in medical school and therefore the rise of women in the field of medicine? And this paper, for me, actually was really important because what you showed was that we can take a look at a policy that passes through an executive order and ask, is that enough? Or do we need some kind of incentives behind it? Is policy enough alone? Well, I've spent some time working in government, and one of the first things I learned, I think pretty much my first day on the job, is that there's a big difference between the rules and the enforcement of the rules. And that's exactly what Thomas brought to his job market paper. He brought the rule, that was an executive order, but he brought it with enforcement around money. And did that money make a difference? And what he showed is that you actually need both of these things to actually have an impact. And that's why previous researchers who had been able to dig into some of these things hadn't seen much of an impact of either one of them, and that's because they're working together. As somebody who actually wrote executive orders, I learned a lot about this, about thinking about how we can make executive orders actually have some bite in the future. So I think your research is very applied and will make a big difference in the world. And similarly, of course, I have to mention your work with Martha, which asks what role the Equal Pay and Civil Rights Act played in narrowing the gender gap. Again, previous people had found not much of an effect, but it's your unique approach that allows you to find an effect from that. So what I really want to commend you on is that you really dig into history to answer important policy questions that help guide where we should be going forward today, as both an economic historian and a labor economist. And I think that your work demonstrates your mastery of modern applied econometric techniques and your detective skills, because you really have to be a detective to do what you do. So I'm excited that you're going to be joining the Work and Organization Department at the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota next year, because I'm convinced that you are going to have just an amazing research career that will not only have you shine bright in academia, but what I think is more important is maybe make a big difference in the world in the kinds of policy that we implement. So congratulations.
Leticia Juárez and Javier Cravino.
So congratulations, Leticia. It's been a real pleasure to work with you. So Leticia's thesis studies how movements in exchange rates affect import prices. This is a central question in international macroeconomics because it's at the heart of how shocks get transmitted across countries. Her new insight was to know that a lot of international trade really occurs between very large buyers, multinationals buying from small producers, especially in developing countries. So what she set up to study is how does buyer market power shape this relationship between exchange rate and prices, which is what we call exchange rate pass-through. And to do this, she sets up a new general equilibrium model, which she combines with some macro data to shed light on this. And what she finds is that indeed, larger buyers have more variable markdowns, and this shapes how change in exchange rate get transmitted to prices. So overall, I think this was a fantastic paper. Leticia had a very active market. She's going to be joining the research department of the Inter-American Development Bank, IADB. And I wish you the best, and I know you're going to succeed. So congratulations.
Stephanie Carroll and James Hines.
Steph's research is on the determinants of charitable giving. In her thesis, she finds a fascinating connection between political contributions and donations to charitable organizations. In short, what she finds is that when there's more contributions to political organizations because there's a campaign going on or an election, charitable organizations respond by reducing the amount of fundraising that they do, and they wind up collecting fewer donations as a result. I've asked myself, during busy election cycles, do I pay less attention to charitable solicitations? And if I'm honest, I have to say the answer is yes. So I think Steph is right about this, and she certainly has an unassailably large amount of statistical evidence to back her claims. I will tell you more broadly, the experience of being Steph's advisor has been quite a ride. I find myself continuously pelted with fascinating empirical findings, with new insights, and with boundless energy. Steph is off to the US Treasury, where they could use a little help these days. But what they may not realize is they're about to get a whole lot of help.
Michelle Lam, and I happen to be her advisor. So Michelle's thesis collects highly original and varied work in spatial economics. Her main chapter studies, through a combination of painstaking data collection, analysis, and modern modeling techniques in urban economics, what were the impacts of the rezoning program under the Bloomberg administration in New York City. She finds that this program, which allowed essentially for buildings to become taller in different places in the city, lowered rents and improved the welfare of all workers, but encouraged segregation of workers of different levels of education. In another paper, which is one of my favorite papers of hers, she showcases the breadth of her interests and skills. This paper shows that the ancient Silk Road, a trade network that fostered trade and exchange of ideas between Asia and Europe throughout antiquity and the Middle Ages, had effects on development and city formation that are felt even today. As Michelle heads to DC to start a new job at Bates White, we will miss her for more than just her academic achievements. The university will be a little bit lonelier without her concerts at the Carillon. Congratulations, Michelle. Keep in touch. Nathan Mather and James Hines.
has a multi-pronged dissertation. One chapter is about the allocation of teachers and students and the importance of finding a really good fit. I confess that as an advisor, I really never lost the surreal feeling of the play within the play, of advising a student on research about the importance of the fit between teacher and student. The bigger part of Nate's thesis was about estimating the shape of the utility function. We know that it's better to have higher income. The question Nate's research was addressing is, how much better is it to have higher income? Nate finds that it just keeps on getting better, that utility is roughly linear in income. And this, folks, is why the rich always want more. Empowered by this insight, I went to my department chair to ask for a raise. An effort that was unsuccessful, even though it was a research-based request. So, having failed there, my next step was to apply for nighttime work at Walmart. But I learned that Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates had also applied, so I would get something only on a space-available basis. Nate successfully defended his thesis on Wednesday, 2 days ago. And after graduation, he is off to work at a San Diego consulting firm called, I kid you not, Intensity, where he will have the opportunity to learn whether there really is any point where the marginal utility of income starts to diminish.
Mike May and Hoyt Blakely.
All right, those of you from out of town, I encourage you to go familiarize yourself with the ferry houses of Ann Arbor. These are stores, you walk up to them, and these little tiny figurines and little tiny houses up front. So that's a thing we have here for some reason. All right, we'll come back to that in a sec. So Mike's dissertation is relevant to the battle between the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people, and the yes in my backyard people, the YIMBYs. And of course, it's a huge debate of how in our society do we deal with housing and growing population, a heterogeneous population, a population with inequality and so forth. And so he has several chapters on this. I'll tell you about a couple. One is looking at a reform in regulation in Houston where they have very large lot sizes, right? 5,000 square feet is the minimum size of a lot. So imagine if you have one of these, you want to live in one of these Ann Arbor ferry houses, right? You go pull it off the wall and you put it there. You still need a 5,000 square foot lot. Right? So we economists, we say this is a fixed cost, right? And so then what do you do with that? Well, that's going to affect the real estate market because not everybody's going to want to have a big lot. Maybe they want a small house. Maybe they're low income or middle to lower income. This is just too much land for them. It's going to affect the land market. So he looks at how does the land market change. And the answer is, oh, sorry, I didn't say the crucial part, which is they say, well, let's bring that down. Let's bring that down to 1,500 square feet, right? And so what happens is it really, not surprisingly, maybe affects the real estate market. There was apparently a hole in the market of all these small houses that weren't built. And he's able to show that, causally in a convincing way, but also put it in a model of the real estate market and show who benefits from these changes. Okay, so that's important and policy relevant. Another thing that he's working on now that's again related to who gets what is thinking about a question. Here's the basic question, right? When you last sold your house, who bought it? Right? Okay. Now, not the who. The specific who's not so important, but it's like, what are the characteristics? What kind of house in particular did they have last time? Right? And so you could imagine kind of a model of the real estate market where everybody's buying their last house. Sorry, that you're selling your house to someone who basically had the same kind of house, just in a slightly different place, right? So that's like a real estate market where if you think about this axis is how expensive the house is, it kind of looks like this, right? Where the people who are churning between houses, they're churning between the same kinds of houses. So he's able to put together data now that we have, like named data that we can go into our secret data caves, and he's going to say, well, what does it look like? Does the world look like this? All right, if the world looks like this, and you build a bunch of, say, high-income housing, guess that's going to be good for the people who are up here. If you build low-income housing, it can be here. All right. Now, what does he find? He finds it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like this. It looks like this, right? There's an enormous amount of churn such that you go out like 3 houses down in this chain, and it's kind of hard to guess what the first house was. It's kind of close to the mean. And so that has big implications for how we think about housing building. It suggests you can kind of add houses at all points in the distribution, and you can have benefits that kind of spill over to everyone. All right, so those are I guess these are in a kind of YIMBY-ish sides of things. And as I said, this is two kind of very different topics, but all very innovative applications of data, all tremendously policy relevant. I've really enjoyed having our conversations. I know he's going to continue doing great work in the future, and we look forward to seeing more of it. So, Mike, congratulations.
Benjamin Pyle and Mike Mueller-Smith.
Hi, everyone. So pursuing a PhD is not for the faint of heart. You're basically signing up while all of your friends and acquaintances are going through the social and professional milestones that everyone gets to enjoy in their 20s and 30s. You're signing up to basically spend 5 to 7 or more years with modest compensation, little structure, and the ultimate instruction of pushing the frontier of knowledge. Ben decided to take that and then make it harder by deciding to also pursue a JD at the same time that he was getting his PhD in economics. Now, I was a little worried that this had all gone off the rails when Ben moved to the farm and he started bringing in bushels of like zucchini, and I thought we might have lost him entirely. But he managed to bring it back around. Ben's dissertation studies the intersections between the criminal justice system and labor markets. In his job market paper, he adds really important evidence to better understand why it is that people with criminal records might struggle in terms of employment outcomes. A lot of theories have been proposed to study this. The leading candidates that are informing policy are about issues on lack of skills or potentially reliability, things that where employers don't want to hire individuals with criminal backgrounds because they might not be good employees. Ben is going to add a different line of reasoning to this work, thinking about the nature of negligent hiring laws and the liabilities that employers face through hiring potentially equally qualified individuals without any differences in skill, but who simply hold a criminal record such that they might be open to lawsuits if anything should happen while they're on the job. He studies the introduction of these policies as well as some of their moderation over time and finds evidence consistent with the idea that these negligent hiring laws are limiting economic opportunity for those with criminal records and amplifying their likelihood of engaging in future criminal activity. It's been a real pleasure to work with Ben over the course of his PhD. He's been my teaching assistant, he's been my research assistant. I mean, he's basically been through my entire experience as an assistant professor. And so I'm so excited that he's now moving on, leaving the nest to Boston University, and I can't wait to see what comes next. Congratulations.
Teresa Ranoshova and John Leahy.
The question we have to ask ourselves is what is not in Teresa's thesis. It sits at the intersection of urban economics, family economics, macroeconomics, labor economics. It's economics, basically. It's quite a tour de force. So the title is Commuting and the Value of Marriage. But to answer this question, she builds a model in which there's young people, there's old people, there's a choice of where to live, there's a choice of where to work, there's a choice of who to marry, there's a choice of whether to get married. Implicitly, there are children. It's life. All of life. So what does she get out of this model? Well, it's very, very kind of intuitive. So the title is Commuting and the Value of Marriage. The question is, how does suburbanization, the growth of the city, affect the value of marriage? How does it differentially affect men, women, married women? And the answer is kind of simple. Married couples have a technological advantage over singles. They can be two places at once. This allows one to commute a long way, earn a great living, both to live where they want, and the other to be available for the inevitable problems at home. So that she finds that as cities grow, married couples gain, singles lose. Men and women both gain because there's this marriage thing that people have to both agree to. And so in the end, you get these great results, combining theory, combining data, combining macro, combining micro. I really look for great things from Teresa going forward. She's going to be joining the research department at the Deutsche Bundesbank, the German central bank, and we look forward to interactions in the future. Congratulations.
Nishat Rao and Matthew Shapiro.
Congratulations, Nishad. Nishad's thesis is on the important question of the intergenerational and transmission of wealth. So it's a vexing problem that the rich get richer and the poor stay poor. And why is that? And what factors are at play there? And it might have to do with the labor market activity. It might have to do with housing activity. If your parents do well in the labor market, maybe they're going to provide you resources. Or if your parents bring you up in a big house, maybe that means they're wealthy. Maybe that means they brought you up in a neighborhood with advantaged schools. So it's going to be very hard to sort out all the interrelated causality and possible reverse causality. So Nishad addresses this by doing, I lose track of the number of differences, at least a diff and diff and diff, that looks at how growing up in a market with a strong housing market that's driven by a strong labor market that is interacted with the classic tightness of the housing market, where these shocks will differentially affect housing prices, for example, because it's San Francisco and there are a bunch of mountains and oceans limiting growth, not to mention regulation. And he finds highly credible evidence that the transmission of wealth is important through housing, but is mediated largely by having grown up in a house in a strong labor market. He also extends this to intragenerational transmission of wealth and whether or not people can move. It is another quintessential Michigan thesis. It uses our panel study of income dynamics, which has the sort of data you need on this, linking households across generations with credible measurements of income, wealth, and labor supply. So congratulations on a wonderful thesis. Nishad will be joining the Bank of Canada in a policy and research job.
I want to recognize 3 of our PhD graduates who could not be here today. Florian Travain, Michael Morto, and Yassar Ersan. So let's give them, they're not here, but still, let's give them a round of applause. And could the graduates stand? I'd like to acknowledge them one last time for their fabulous achievements. That's it. They want to just stay standing and get applause for the rest of, anyway. I would like now, I have the great pleasure of introducing Dmitry Stoilerov, who is the director of the Master's Program in Economics. Dmitry, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, faculty and staff, guests and graduates. As we gather here today to celebrate the graduation from the Masters of Applied Economics program, I feel very proud and grateful. I'm honored to be looking at a diverse cohort of graduates hailing from different countries across the globe. Together, we have undertaken a remarkable journey of academic excellence, cultural exchange, and personal growth. To the international graduates, I want to take a moment and acknowledge the unique challenges they have faced as they decided to study in the US, leaving homes, families, and familiar surroundings to pursue higher education in a foreign country required courage, determination, and resilience. The international students have navigated language barriers, cultural differences, and unfamiliar academic systems. And yet, they have emerged stronger, more knowledgeable, and more capable than ever before. Your time in the program have been more than just acquiring knowledge and skills in quantitative economics and related subjects. It has been an opportunity to open our minds, to learn from each other's perspectives, and foster friendships and lifelong connections. In studying together, you have enriched one another's academic experience and have provided your classmates with deeper understanding of the world's complexities. Today, we not only celebrate our academic achievements, but we also celebrate the bonds of friendship that you have formed. The study sessions, the group projects, and the countless conversations have forged lasting memories that will stay with you for a lifetime. You have not only learned from your professors, but you have also learned from each other, building a network of colleagues and a network of friends that will extend far beyond your time in this program. As you move forward from this milestone, you are equipped with a unique set of skills that will undoubtedly shape your future endeavors. No matter which career path you will choose to pursue, you are well prepared to make a meaningful impact in your respective fields. The quantitative skills, critical thinking abilities, and cross-cultural competencies that you have developed in this program will serve as a solid foundation for your future success. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our faculty for their unwavering support and guidance through your academic journey. Your dedication to excellence and commitment to students have been instrumental in shaping the graduates into the professionals they are today. Let us give a round of applause to your instructors. Asya Senova, Maciej Dudek, Heng Liu, Donni Wan, and Oleg Zamulin. I would also like to recognize the excellent and caring Julie Hines, our MAE program coordinator. Thank you, Julie, for your support and commitment to the MAE students. I would also like to extend our appreciation to families, friends, and loved ones for their support, encouragement, and sacrifices that made this day possible. As we stand on the cusp of a new chapter of your lives, let us embrace the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. With open hearts and open minds, let us continue to learn, grow, and make a positive impact on the world, drawing on the knowledge and experiences gained during your time in this program. In conclusion, congratulations to the MAE graduates on this momentous occasion. Let us take pride in our achievements, celebrate our diversity, and look forward to a bright future filled with possibilities. Thank you, and congratulations to the MAE class of 2023. Let me now introduce Mei-Fang Yang, who will help me read the names of our graduates as we award the certificates.
Congratulations, everyone. Amlak Almoteri. Jody Bodas. Chen Xiyuan. Chi Tianyi. Jing Tongyu. Li Jiaying. Lu Yixuan. 潘静、Apichaya Piosa、Wildan Ramadan、Shubhanji Singh、隋家军、孙晓霞、Maximilian Tutuarima、王从文、王浩成、王天一、薛吉伟、尹天畅、赵一凡、周泽清、
This concludes the graduate commencement celebration for MAE students. Chair John Leahy with closing remarks.
Before closing, can we just have all the master's students stand up and give them one round of applause? This really concludes the graduate commencement. There is a reception in Foster Library afterwards. Go Blue. Class dismissed.